The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium.
All right, we are back and we are live. We will be talking with Terral. I don't know much about Terral. I know that I've heard talk in the emails that I get about Terral and his work with the Black Star, which has been embraced by the Planet X folks. And yet Terral says that it's not Planet X and that Planet X is some kind of a deceiving. So what'll be very interesting is to get the whole deal on it. Now, I want to ask people during this first hour to not try to call in because I want to get the basis down. We'll get calls coming back on that when we do have Terral, who is will be on the line. Let me get this set up. And, of course, that's one of the things with doing the live radio show. We're almost there. There. One couple more things here. There. There we go. So we will have that going. We hit the button here. Yeah. Welcome. Come on here, Terral. Let's have a chat about who you are, where you've come from, and then we'll get into the Planet X. And so I welcome you to the show.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. I need a mic check. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Sound coming through good.
Okay. You want to know something about me, about this character, this Terral guy? Yeah, my name's actually Terral, is the way that my mom said it whenever she named me that. But I'm more of a Bible scholar. That was my life's work. And if you go to Terral03.com, you can read my book, The Mystery Explained. It's down in the bottom column there. Did that for decades, then got into 9/11 research after that book was written and wrote the 9/11 Truth, Exposing the Cheney-Rumsfeld Black Operation. You can get that book PDF for free at my website too. And now we're working on Project Black Star. In 2010, December 10th, then the Elenin Comet was discovered. And I had just finished the 9/11 investigation. And the keywording for the documentation on Elenin, that's 9/11 backwards. The perihelion date was 9/11, 10 years to the day after the 9/11 attacks. And that lured me in. The keywording, that's what I do in Scripture, in the 9/11 documentation, and in this documentation is very good keyword analysis, word usage, words that are omitted, deleted, and things like that. So that I saw a pattern there. Lettered agencies' fingerprints are all over the Elenin PSYOP, which is what it turned out to be. And same thing with the ISON PSYOP. That's a lettered agency operation. And what they're doing is desensitizing the public using, that's what the Planet X movement is, in my opinion, is very much like the 9/11 movement. It's a lot of lettered agencies crisscrossing and controlling the narrative, making sure nobody, Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld, going to get away with it, basically. That's, if you read my book, I heard previously the guy speaking about the House of Rothschild. You're not going to catch up with those guys. The eugenics, the lady was talking about before that, Rothschild, Gates, Rockefeller eugenics, that's chemtrailing, nanotechnologies, and you're not going to stop that either. These people own our government, just like the last fellow was saying. So I got caught up in this. I'm starting my 6th year in tracking the Black Star. It is the invisible collapsed binary twin to our sun. It comes to the inner solar system about every 3,658 years. It's been characterized as Nibiru and Hercolobus, destroyer, and different things. But it's taken quite a bit of time to understand, to wrap my head around the science of what's going on. And my feeling is that this Project Black Star investigation is the best science-based investigation anywhere and we know exactly where it is in the Libra constellation. We've been tracking it all the way from Leo through Virgo and now Libra. And we're tracking it through the Earth changes. We have our own resident astronomers, own observatory, infrared equipment. We know exactly where it is, and we know that we cannot observe it. We know that we cannot see it, but we have figured out a lot of things in the tracking the Earth changes, the seismic pattern, the magnetic pole migration pattern, and they are moving together. And they're both pointing right now at the black stars in the Libra constellation. Is there something more on the personal note that you want to know, or that's pretty much how my investigations have gone?
Okay, well that's good. That's a good overview. I appreciate that. What I kind of want to do is go through things. First off, you're saying that it's not Planet X that is it's the way it's being portrayed in the various medias. That's the scam per se. Meaning,
Absolutely.
I mean, meaning there is a body out there that does come in on some routine, some kind of rotational routine, and causes havoc. I mean, that's something that we all can agree on.
Right.
The question that I would have is, I've had virtually everybody who's uttered the word Planet X, even dark stars and Vulcan and whatnot. And I started off by saying that when I grew up in school, it was a common assumption that we had a dark twin. I mean, it was not a big thing. It was just kind of, most of the suns out there are binaries. It's reasonable to assume ours is. There is some orbit problems out with the outer planets that would be, it was kind of a thing. And then it disappeared. And then there was nothing. There was no binary, and this was all baloney. And now with the Planet X group that came out early 2000, it's back. It's back, meaning that it's now a conspiracy theory rather than standard science, let's say. And so I wanted to find out. You did say a couple things. One, you could track it infrared. That's good because.
No, you cannot track it using infrared.
You cannot.
It's not a brown dwarf star. It's something between a black dwarf and a neutron magnetar type neutron star, without its rotation. This is the binary twin to our sun. It was much larger than our sun at the formation of our solar system, and then it went supernova and imploded. And what was left over went from the compression is what's left. My view is between 3 and 5 kilometers in diameter. It's extremely small. But 1 tablespoon of this matter would be 2 Ghazi pyramids.
Okay, so this is not a black hole, and it's not a neutron star. It's something between it?
That's right. But it behaves a lot like a black hole. And what we have going on between our sun, we could talk all night and just about their relationships. But the thing that is exciting for me in my research lately, I discovered binary star repulsion, which is electromagnetic fields, and as this black star is coming in to reach perihelion with our sun, perihelion being the nearest point where it's supposed to be going maximum velocity, this star is behaving kind of in an opposite way. It is actually slowing down as it's coming into orbit because of the magnetic effect. It's very, very small, has a lot of mass, has gigantic magnetic polarity. The black star sits inside of a very, very deep gravity well and is surrounded by an event horizon like a black hole. And it has the relationship with the sun so that it has opposite polarity of our sun. So as it's coming in, it's like trying to push 2 magnets together the wrong way. You're getting that repulsion.
Let me ask you, what does he mean by opposite polarity? Like the north or south cells is north, or are you talking about positive versus negative charge? What?
Positive versus negative charge.
Okay, so the sun would be positive, I would assume, giving out, since it's shooting out particles, which would be positrons or what's the word? Protons that have been stripped from electrons, been stripped from them. So this other thing would be negative, or is it because that would be attracting? So they must be positive as well. I mean, I don't understand.
No, they're not attracting. Gravitationally, this thing is trying to fall around the sun, just like everything else, like the Earth, like Jupiter, and everything else. But why it's on the far end of its orbit, that's the way it's behaving. But as it gets close to the sun, something happens. These 2 stars are connected through a magnetic portal connection. If you don't know what that is, go to my website. I've got a 15-minute video on it and all kind of links to NASA papers. The Earth is connected to the sun through a magnetic portal connection. It's just like Jupiter and just like Saturn. And
I mean, well, can you give me a 3-sentence summary of what that is? I mean,
okay, it's like an umbilical cord that goes from the sun to the Earth. It connects and disconnects on 8-minute cycles. It conducts massive amounts of subatomic particles through the internal conduits. There are active conduits on the very center, and there are passive conduits on the outside that provide insulation until the stars get very, very close together. Because at each disconnection, with nearing proximity, then there's a transition in the active conduits, and the passive conduits, and they're switching over to active state. So the reason, for example, that our sun is going to sleep is because the influence of this dark star that's siphoning electromagnetism from the sun. So it's supposed to be a solar maximum, and the sun's going to sleep, but all the planets are heating up. The entire solar system's heating up. 2015 is the hottest year on record, right behind 2014. We're getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And the reason is because of redirected solar electromagnetism coming through a secondary matrix. It's a secondary magnetic portal connection matrix that's centered on the hub of this black star that's coming in here. So it's based on near proximity. Proximities has a lot to do with everything, and that's what is causing the seismic pattern that's being created here. So as we're going around the sun, we're going towards the black star sometimes, and then we come around in orbit, and then it's moving towards us, and then we go behind the sun relative to it. That's causing 2 Earth change uptick periods per year and 2 lull periods per year. And I'm able to tell you which week of the year far in advance that we're going to have the least number of our 2.5 to 4 magnitude earthquakes for that reason. And the weeks that we're going to have the most seismicity. That's been shifting from March to September in 2011 when you had Fukushima, round to April, and now we're getting into May. May and November were the active times this year. Recently, we just had 5, 7 magnitude earthquakes in a 4-week period. That hasn't happened in the last 5 years. But that's happening now, even when we pass behind the sun. We're going to pass between the sun and the black star again. This time it's going to happen on May the 7th of this year. Pretty firm on that date.
That's between it, so we'll be between them or behind the sun?
No. Whenever we had the Peruvian quakes, the 27.7, 600 kilometers deep, that's when we passed behind the sun relative to the black star late November. Now we're going to outside orbit position the first week of February. And that's whenever we're going to have the lowest amount of seismic activity. And then we're going to be between the 2 stars on May the 7th, coming up. Lots of seismicity. We're going to have the solar flares, X-class solar flares connected to these near-side alignment quake events, which I've been predicting. Fukushima was predicted within 4 days. Guerrero the next year was predicted within 2 days. This recent quake was the 7.8, the Nepal quake, if you guys remember that. We were right between the 2 stars when that happened. And then we had the X-class flares right after that. But that's from magnetic portal connection convergence. As these portal connections get closer together, remember there's one that runs from the sun to the Earth, and there's one that runs from the sun to the black star.
But this does sound a little reminiscent of what James McKinney talks about with the return currents, as he calls them, and the sheets where he talks about the various earthquakes and whatnot because of the Earth passing between other planets, which will conduct this. He's calling it electricity that is going through it. So I would imagine if this sun it would be very powerful, and if you would get this passing between the sun, I mean, it does. I don't know. I'm not speaking for James. I'm just saying that as a person who listens to him and thinks that his plasma commentary model is accurate, it does seem that that's a possibility. Now, how do you have you drawn these conclusions by observing the clockwork mechanism of all these things happening and kind of like plotting it out and making a graph to solve the equation? Okay.
It took a little while to build a baseline, but then now the predictive modeling is telling me exactly what's going to happen. Back in 2013, after the Solomon Island quake event that broke the tectonic plate in two, it reset the entire Pacific Ocean ring of fire, tectonic volcanic dynamic, reset everything. My values, they're averaging about between 200 and 210 on my 2.5 to 4 magnitude earthquakes. I can tell you exactly where they're going to be, except for after that earthquake event, they dropped all the way down to 107. That hasn't happened in the last 5-6. That hasn't happened. It only happened then when we had the reset. And that set the tectonic cascade the tectonic plates now are cascading towards there to fill up the space, and now you're having the pressure. The plates that have been pressed up against the North American craton are relieving. They are actually trying to go towards Solomon Island, and it's like a domino effect, and it's already in full motion. There's going to be a gigantic event on the west coast of the United States whenever these two subterranean magma waves slap together at the California quake swarm area later in the timeline. That's going to happen.
All right. Now, I also appreciate that when one is putting together into the future, predictions, let's say, I appreciate that these predictions are based on models which are not literally clockwork like the quartz vibrations. I mean, they are in the ballpark. But have you projected forward, say, for the next year or more of what particular areas would be affected? And ultimately, my question would be, when will this dark star be in a position so that it's no longer a theory talk between people on the radio?
Okay. The destruction that's going to come from this thing is going to be sudden. Although Fukushima, this is an event that's already happened. Chile, the 8.8 on February 27, 2010, that was on an alignment too. When you go back to Sumatra, 2004, December, that was on the alignment. That was on the 188-day cycle that we discovered. And so, yes, I can tell you we're going to have an event on May the 7th this year. I'll be surprised if it's outside of May the 7th when this happens. And then we're going to go across the Black Star orbit path on May the 20th. And then we're going to go to outside orbit position. That's going to be about the 1st of September. And then we're going to come behind the sun again, relative to the black star. That's going to be about the 10th of December. We're going to go to outside orbit position again. And if you just add about 12 days to these values, this is what it's been doing. So the next year, 2017, on May the 20th, is whenever we're expecting to have a geological pole shift from a black star Earth crossing event. We cross the black star's orbit path in the spring, every spring on May the 20th. Now, what we've been doing is watching from February the 27th, like I said, then Fukushima, March 11th, 2011, Guerrero was March the 20th, 2012. We keep projecting forward, and you got 11, 12, or 13 days between each of these events. And now we're going to have a May the 7th event. My modeling, I've had multiple models because we have been anticipating it's going to increase velocity reaching perihelion, but it just has not happened. The thing continues slowing down. And it was when I discovered the work of a Canadian student. It wasn't an astrophysicist or something that discovered this star-to-star reverse polarity, that in a binary twin that's smaller comes in and slows down when it's trying to reach perihelion. And that has added that threw 5 models away. Now I know what's going to happen. It's
okay. Well,
May the 20th, 2017.
I think
2017.
Say it again. No, I mean,
May the 20th, 2017 is whenever we're going to have a crossing event, according to what the science is saying right now.
Okay, that will be the next time we cross, or that will be the optimal for problems.
2016, we're going to have an alignment event on May the 7th, and the black star is going to be very close.
Okay, and then by the 2017, it'll be closer. It'll
move
up.
It's going to fly right under us in orbit. Along the 1.6 million mile segment of space, we're traveling on May the 20th.
Okay, so when you were talking about May 20th, having a event, or crossing its path, but it'll be slightly lower than us, so it'll be close. And it'll be like, is this something we'll be able to see?
You cannot see this thing if it's right in front of you. It's impossible.
Well, I mean, you'd be able to see it if it crossed in front of the moon or stars or something. There'd be this blackness that would.
No, it doesn't work that way. The micro lensing, the gravitational lensing effect, you're going to see right around it. This thing is like a ghost that's coming in here. You cannot see it, but you can see the effects of it. You can see when it's influencing something else, but whenever it gets right next to the sun is going to turn dark. The black star is going to siphon all solar electromagnetism from the sun. So what happens at that point, I don't know. That hasn't happened yet. I really don't know. There's talk about it grows wings. If you go back to Nibiru, you go back to Ascension, you go back the Sumerian tablets, then that's how they describe it. But that's that's what a meteor looks like when it's coming in.
So it won't
Sometimes-
it won't be between us and the sun, but it'll be like under it, close enough to.
Right. Yeah, it's just below the ecliptic
So
plane.
all right. So then we'll be able to see when you say the effects. When it passes past Earth and goes to the sun to have this interaction. I mean, is it going to already be like living in a geological gymnasium at that point that we won't be even paying attention to it, or will it be still civilization?
It's going to be destruction way before this thing reaches perihelion. So that's why it comes like a thief in the night for us. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, start at verse 1. By the time you get to verse 5, you'll see that the sons of day, the sons of light can see it coming, but the sons of darkness cannot see it coming. The destruction comes suddenly, like the birth pangs upon a woman with child. The birth pangs are birth pangs have regular symmetry in their pattern, and just like my seismic pattern, my magnetic pole migration pattern, this is the birth pangs that I'm telling you about in the seismic pattern. And some of us can see the signs, and some of us can't. But whenever it gets close to the Earth, it's going to wrestle magnetic polarity control from the sun, and it's going to flip our Earth around. Remember, it has opposite polarity. So it's going to have a pushing effect on the magnetic North Pole. That's why the magnetic North Pole is migrating right now, and it's migrating along a predictable path. I've been doing that now for more than a year, predicting where the magnetic pole is going to be precisely. Because it's not going straight to Siberia, it's using a series of loops, and it's circling on itself. And those loops, it's following last year's path, trailing by the same 11 to 13 days that's in my seismic chart. So there's a connection there. But as it's coming to Earth orbit path, it wrestles magnetic polarity control of the Earth from the sun, and then it tips us over, and almost half the people of the planet live near the ocean. So we're not going to be speaking to them.
All right, let me ask you about this polarity and whatnot.
Okay.
Is it a polar? Does it have polar polarity? In other words, does it have a north and south pole?
Absolutely.
All right, so for it to affect the North Pole, one might assume that its North Pole, quote unquote, is aligning up and affecting our North Pole.
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
Because
it's in an arm wrestling contest for magnetic polarity control of our planet.
So in other words, if you took two magnets, bar magnets, both, and have the north facing up and the south down, you put them together, they're going to fight, and the stronger one will turn the other one to align.
That's exactly right. And when you put them in space, then you can see what's happening.
So I would take it that this is, I mean, I understand about black holes and neutron stars and how they're dense and all that, but this, if it would be the same density of Earth, let's say, how big would it be?
I really don't know.
Okay, I mean, because it's
Well, to give you some concept, if it's a black dwarf star and it's 50% larger than Earth and it's half the mass of our sun. If it's a neutron star, it's only 10 to 12 kilometers across and it's twice the mass of our sun. To give you some idea.
okay. I see. All right.
Yeah.
Because it would have to have its own inertia and mass to wrestle the Earth out of the magnetism. Otherwise it would turn. That's why I was asking.
Oh, there's no way to. Yeah, the Earth is like a cotton ball. This thing's like a bowling ball, except for it's extremely small.
Right. I got
But it's the magnetic polarity that's going to tip Earth over. I'm not worried at all about being hit by it.
Now, is it, knowing how black holes are, it's because the actual matter of it is so small, and therefore it is so far deep into the gravity well. If it would pass by the sun, which is more massive and larger, it would still be very strong against the sun because of this pinpoint, let's call it, gravity well rather than the widespread gravity well of the sun.
That's right. So what you have is like a giant drain, like a black hole. And it's trying to suck everything in, but it can't because there's just not enough room for the ocean to go inside this little bitty spot. Right. So then but you have the rotation, and then you have the reverberations and these waves, these interplanetary shock waves that we're getting reports about. This year it's going to be about March the 10th or 11th or 12th. Suspicious observers is going to start giving them. When we're behind the sun, then we have the 2 astronomical units of solar wind. between us, so we're not getting the readings from here on Earth. Even at outside orbital position in February, we're not going to get them either because we have crosswinds from the solar wind. But when we come on around and we are between the stars, we're getting ready to go between them, we're going to start getting these reverberations, they're characterizing as interplanetary shock waves, as if they're originating from somewhere else, but they're actually coming from this object in space. If you would like, I'll give you the smoking evidence, the smoking gun evidence of what I'm talking about here, and I think it'll make sense to everybody. If you'd like me to, I'll do that. Okay, the most important event in this investigation took place in multiple events. They took place on March the 12th and 13th of 2012. Now, this was 1 day and 1 year after Fukushima. 1 year and 1 day after Fukushima was the most important day in my investigation. What happened was, Earth magnetosphere, it has two primary components, the bow shock and the tail. And those components turned around so that the bow shock of our magnetosphere faced the Leo constellation for 28 hours. And that information, I have the GIF. You can watch exactly as it turned, and you've got on the night side of our planet the bow shock for 28 hours. At the same time, whenever this happened, Mars was directly behind us in orbit, like it's going to be on May the 7th this year. Mysterious dust storm. If you just Google mysterious dust storm, March 12th, 2012. The reason it was mysterious is because it started on the dark side of the planet. It couldn't come from the sun, could it? Not at midnight, right? So at the same time our Earth magnetosphere turned around, the mysterious Martian dust storm started, because Mars doesn't have a robust magnetosphere like we do, and the black star was behind it. And when you had these magnetic portal connections, see, they're converging like a triangle, like your arms out in front of you, and they're converging. They're pushing these magnetic clouds. The clouds are formed by portal-to-portal cross-firing. That is sprite formation. So you get all this lightning strikes that are going on there, electromagnetic cloud that forms, and it's squeezed in between the converging magnetic portals. It pushes the wind. It's like a solar wind. It pushes it, and it came from the black stars, converging portals, past Mars to create that dust storm, and turned our magnetosphere around for 28 hours. And turning Earth's magnetosphere around for any duration by a gamma ray burst or anything like that is impossible, because the source originated outside of the heliosphere, outside the bow shock of the heliosphere. Impossible. So whatever did turn it around, the bow shock, which just happened to point at the Leo constellation out of all the constellations, it was pointing at the same constellation where my black star was. So to me, that's the best smoking gun evidence that there's something here. NASA was caught scrubbing the data from the servers. We retrieved the data, and then the Martian dust storm story came out. And we're going to have another Martian dust storm that's going to kick off. That is, supposing the black star still be on Mars. If it's on the inside of Mars, it won't happen this way. But everything's going to be set up here in May the 7th, like it was on March the 12th. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's happening there. And we're going to make the prediction ahead of time that it's going to happen. And hopefully the black star is far enough behind Mars that we get the dust storm kicking off again this year, just like we did in 2012. Go ahead.
No, I will say that this is the first time I'm hearing this stuff, and I've had a billion people on talking about it, so I am interested. The idea of having it be a electromagnetic force is something that is out of main science, looking at it being very weak, and that gravity is even though gravity is weak, it's the force. It's interesting to have you come up with these. I call it like a spoke wheel coming with the sun. These various electrical or electromagnetic aspects. So it's kind of fascinating. Now, we talk about these events happening in the past. Just one of the things that bothered me about the classic Planet X Nibiru 3,600-year orbit thing is that if it was that orbit would be disrupted, and that orbit wouldn't be 3,600 years anymore. And yet, right. Now this one is the same 3,600-year model,
right?
But now we're talking about something a lot more massive, so that it wouldn't be affected. It would do more of the affecting.
That's right, like Venus. Check Venus out. It has a reverse retrograde rotation because Venus is very near the perihelion point of this black star. So in previous encounters, the law of probability says Venus is going to have a screwed up situation. And it does, just like it's supposed to. Whenever I draw my line coming from space, from the right of Cancer across Leo, following the markers that have been established by these alignment events, and then you bring the curve around to May the 20th, then it's going to reach perihelion very near Venus. And that's some proof right there in our solar system, observable proof, that can you think of anything else that might cause Venus to have a reverse rotation? Unless it was influenced by something like what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like
would
a
imagine
binary-
reverse rotation would be simply flipping over the planet, and would also explain Uranus, which is kind of on its side, and you have what is it? Is it Neptune reversed or is it Pluto? One of them is reversed. I mean, it makes sense because you would have this biomagnet tugging effect, which would flip the planet over to align it.
Well, it seems to me that Venus was caught very near that event horizon, maybe on multiple occasions. And when the black star passed on by, then it just messed up its rotation. And it could continue to mess up Venus's rotation if Venus is in the wrong place at the wrong time. But from the formation of our solar system, everything is supposed to move prograde. That means in the same direction.
Right.
The sun is turning the same way. The Earth is turning the same way. All the planets are going around the same way, and they're all rotating the same way because that's the way that the dust cloud condensed. The disks were formed, and the spheres, and as the condensation of the dust cloud, then you get the rotation. Right. That's just general physics. Well, Venus is not obeying the laws of physics, is it? It's because some outside force, according to Newton's laws, had to act on it to change what was happening. So that, in my mind, supports what's going on here. Similarly, the big storms on Saturn. They had one recently when it passed through the Leo constellation, whenever my black star was in Leo constellation at the same time. And that the same thing happened 30 years ago. And it takes that 30 years, almost 30 years, for Saturn to go around our solar system just once. So there's more evidence that the black star has been interacting with Saturn for quite some time. Then you have Jupiter's cores liquefying. If you just Google the words, Google's cores liquefying, they discovered in 2012 the thanes, the methane, ethane inside of the core there is heating up from that magnetic portal connection with the black star. So beyond the frost line, now they're discovering water, not just ice beyond the frost line, that there's water. And we're seeing more of this news coming in. And the reason is going to be, and the complexion of Jupiter has changed, the complexion of Saturn has changed, these giants, because their core is changing, and it has to do with the magnetic portal connection with this black star. It's obviously not happening because of the sun.
And it just happened to Google this, and Jupiter's melting heart, excuse me, hold on. Jupiter's melting heart sheds light on mysterious exoplanet. Scientists now have evidence that Jupiter's core has been dissolving, and the implications stretch far outside our solar system.
That's right. And what we're talking about is solar redirected electromagnetism being conducted through the black star through a secondary set of magnetic portal connections. That's why this is happening. And there's no other way for it to happen, especially when what you're reading about is happening while the sun was in solar minimum. 2005, 2008. These things are not. Then the sun goes up in activity. It peaked at the end of 2011, and then the solar output declined to 1/3 normal levels. Flatline, boom. The X-ray flux values, radio flux, down. Well, what caused that? Science, they're not telling you what happened. Have we reached have we reached the maximum of solar cycle 24? No, but why not? The answer is because the sun cannot reach its internal pressure in order for the poles to flip, because it's being siphoned off by another star. That's my star. That's what's doing it to it. So you have these symptoms that have the same explanation. Our sun is under the influence of another star, and our Earth is also, as far as the magnetics go. That's why you're seeing so many mass animal deaths, because our Earth became bipolar in 2004. The incidence of bipolar condition in human beings multiplied 40 times after 2003. So about the same time we got the magnetic portal connection to our planet, people started going that direction too. If you have the propensity to be bipolar, you got it severely, and people that didn't even have it are getting it now.
Now, why don't you define the bipolar of the planet? You're not meaning north and south. You're meaning like two norths,
No,
souths?
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right, because we have two magnetic portal connections to our planet now. Whenever we're behind the sun relative to the black star, they're flip-flopping on the same side of our planet. When we go to outside orbital position that make that 90-degree angle, there's a switch that happens there. Instead of being on the same side, they're eventually, when we go between the two stars, going to be on opposite sides, right? So there's a transition over there. That's whenever you see the changes in the magnetosphere, and then the animals trying to go north and south end up going in east and west because of the bent lines. They travel too far, the wrong way, and then they don't make it to their food source, and then they perish, and then animals on up the food chain start to perish. That's why you're seeing it, though. I mean, that's one of the symptoms, is the mass animal deaths. And for years there, I was predicting precisely when they're going to happen. Then I kind of stopped doing that. What's happening now, we're having a breakdown in the food chain and in the geology with Fukushima and Pacific, then and the outgassing with the volcanoes. Then it's not just the migrating animals that are causing this disruption in the food chain. You're seeing destruction everywhere from a variety of sources. So it wasn't early on in the investigation. It was doing me some good. But once Fukushima came and the radiation and then all the outgassing, then we have mass animal deaths all year round now. So it's not as easy to use that as a indicator to try and help wake people up and warn them.
One of the things that you brought up that's interesting is the magnetism, and that a lot of animals rely on the poles for their navigational sanity, let's say, and that by and it's been shown when you have earthquakes where there is a magnetism flux, local anyway. You have dogs running away and whatnot. There's a guy, I forgot his name, who was able to predict earthquakes very good watching runaway dogs. I had a pretty good model. This would be a local thing.
All right.
So I can.
So that's magnetite. Is the magnetite? They have magnetite in their tissues, and they've evolved it over millions of years. That's the way that they find their direction.
Okay, all right. Well, let's hold it there. We'll take a little break and come back. This is very, very interesting. I still want to get about a half hour in here before we start taking calls, if people can hold off. I also have a lot of people usually send emails, so I'll start reading those as well, if you want to do it, as I get some more information out of Terral on the Black Star. Interesting enough, David Bowie announces his new music, new album, and then dies, and it's called The Black Star. I saw the video, and it's very, very freaky. And I've seen David Bowie for a little while. So, all right, we'll be back in a couple of minutes. If you've been watching while we had the commercial, I've played a little video in the background from NASA about magnetic portal fields and how you're connecting with other planets and the like, right off of NASA's website. It's pretty interesting. And I've done some connections, looking at the magnetic portal connections. And it talks very much like what we're hearing today. So I must admit, Terral, and welcome back. I've not heard this before, which is, not that I'm a ferocious person out there reading and studying, but after doing the show for, 13 years, these are the first times I'm hearing these things. So it's just kind of caught my interest.
Okay. Yeah, you're not going to get that out of the mainstream, but there had to be a connection between the solar flare activity and the near-side alignment and backside alignment quakes. For some reason, somehow, Earth was an active participant as we were coming around in orbit, so there had to be a connection there. There had to be something that's causing it, and then that's what the investigation does. That's what the research is. We look everywhere with a lot of researchers working together, and then if you do enough research and the information's out there, we're going to find it, and that's what we did. And then we were able to build a predictive model that says when we're going to have our flares with our near-side alignment event, where the magnetic north pole is going to be, and our predictions turn out to be right. So that's the goal, right? In order to gather enough evidence so you can build a good predictive model and tell people what's going to happen. So you guys can follow along. There's 4 key marker positions, outside orbit position on either end of the orbit. That's the 90-degree angle relative to the black star in Libra. so that whenever you lay the calendar on top of the solar system, and then it points us to days that are out there, and we make the predictions, and we're doing a very good job of it. So there had to be a connection, and we found it. And you're not going to find McCanny. I've tried to I've followed quite a bit of his work, and he was over at Revolution Radio. He was over with John Moore for a while. He actually followed Lucas. In 2011, Lucas came over to Revolution Radio and characterized me as a mud flap researcher. But then he exited. He's gone. Then James McCanny kind of took his place when what my view is that there's a disinformation op that's going on there, and they needed somebody to fill those shoes for a while. So McCanny came in, and if you remember, that's when ISON was coming in, and it was a mini solar system and all these things, and it turned out to be a dirty snowball, exactly opposite of what McCanny was trying to say. So I really don't expect to see James McCanny in this debate very much anymore.
No, he won't.
No.
But I do have respect for a lot of his models, which his explanations for things, which have really explained the world for me. So that's one thing. Now I'm looking at your Black Star Time event, which is on your website. I have it up now for people watching on video. This is where we're talking. May 17th is the next predicted event. This is going to be the next alignment.
The next alignment is May the 7th. That chart hasn't been updated yet.
Okay. So May the 7th, 12th, 20th, or 17th and 20th are the days. I wrote these down.
May the 7th, 2016. 2017 is May the 20th.
Okay. What's the 12th? And I wrote that down when you said it May 12th.
That was March the 12th, 2012.
Okay, something else. All right.
That was for the magnetopause reversal and Martian dust storm.
So it has now been changed from the 17th to the 7th.
No, there hasn't been any change. It's been May the 7th all along.
I'm looking at it saying May the 17th on the.
That chart hasn't been updated since 2000. It's been quite a while. There shouldn't be a date there for 2016.
Oh, it's 14. What? Gee.
Yeah. See, that's a little bit older. Now I have the data that I'm going to have to update that.
Okay, gotcha. That was my mistake. I do have a thing with my eyes where numbers kind of get all goofy, so that
okay.
I'll take that. I'll take credit for that one. All right, so now one thing I do find interesting is that going back to the original Nancy Leader Planet X, and I've had several other people talk about comet hitting the Earth and all kinds of other things. They always are in May for some reason. And I find it fascinating that May and October, we have going back to the David Booth Planet X days. October is when he gave the announcement of the beginning of the day of the Lord. And I don't have it in front of me, but those 2 months seem to be the target dates for these things happening. And you've mentioned May here, and also October. So I mean, if everything's either a disinfo or, all right, let me run this. I have a personal theory that the way things work is if you have an event that is so significant and affects, let's say, everybody, and it's happening in the future, along that timeline, you can get the backwash from it. So let me give the example. You throw a pebble into a pond, it makes a ring, right? And if you take that event on a timeline, our time as we know it, which is linear to us, but it isn't, and when it hits that, the event is so significant, it hits that time, it sends out rings forward and backward. Let's take 9/11. When that happened, the world changed. The rings going forward are obvious. Backward would be less obvious because we don't have conscious knowledge of the event. But we can feel the vibrations of the backward shock through time. This is a personal theory of mine. I can't give you a scientific backup of it, but it seems to coincide with some other people's ways of looking at how time is more of a cylinder than a line. And if you take a knife, let's say, and cut through the cylinder, that knife will show up in many different places in time, because time is not a linear event. So what I'm saying is that this event would be extremely significant event for humanity, and that in our collective consciousness we would be experiencing the unpleasantness of it in advance of it coming. These things ripple back through time. But since we don't have a conscious knowledge of what it is to articulate it, especially if it's an event that is not in a collective consciousness, never happened before like this, to this degree, it's gonna vent out within our own paradigms. For example, you have the people who are Planet X followers are going to say it's Planet X, pole shift, monetary collapse. If you're more of a monetary-based individual, you have plagues. They talk about plagues and all kinds of stuff happening. All these events within your paradigm are the closest you can come to explaining this interior information that's coming consciously to you. So that to me, it is somewhat confirmational on what you're saying, is that this event would be so dramatic that people are perceiving it in their own ways. I mean, it was kind of clumsy how I said it, but does that make sense? And you have any comment on that?
Well, some people are. Some people have normalcy bias. They're not going to be able to accept it. They're going to hold on to the things that are familiar to them, things that they want, their dreams, hopes, and dreams, and things like that. They're going to ignore the science, and they're actually going to come out and attack us.
Well, right. Well, I mean, if you're the human nature thing we've seen throughout centuries is you say something that I don't want to hear, I have to shout you down. Or if you're going to upset the political or the monetary system that's running that I'm benefiting by, of course I got to shout you down too. I mean, I understand these actions, but somebody who's in denial of a reality, it still might come out in, let's say cancer, or somebody flipping out, shooting 20 people. I'm not talking about the mind control people. I'm just talking about people this information is coming up, they're denying it, the energy's coming in, they explode in some way, psychically, mentally, emotionally, what have you. This is what I think is what's driving a lot of the craziness in the world, is that this incoming energy, this incoming disaster, if you will, is so big that it's leaking out into the present via these paradigms.
I have to agree with that.
And then this is why I even though I have challenged a lot of the Planet X people in the past, but only because of the inconsistency. Like, I'll get pictures of Planet X. Here's Planet X. We could see it in the sky. Here's a picture across the planet. It's on one side of the sky, sun. It's on the other side of the sun. It's on top of the sun, all at the same time. And this stuff aggravates me because all it does is it muddies the water. And this is why I've been so aggravated by a lot of the Planet X stuff. To me, it's important. If Planet X is 10 days away or 1,000 years away, it's a big difference. And yet the evidence that come up and say, yes, Planet X is right next to the sun. No, it's way out. NASA's found a planet out 100 light years. Yeah, that's Planet X. That's pretty far difference. I got to have consistency here. So this is why I'm asking on your model, because you're at least at face value, you're coming up with evidence that seems to fit over a consistent model, and the variance in it, the few days as it speeds up, is a reasonable one, and is explained by the changing of the speed, which you do explain, as opposed to just saying it does it.
Right.
Because I've had Nancy Leader on the show. Last time I had her on, just a long time ago, was saying that Planet X is hiding behind the sun, and it's locked Earth in orbit. It's not moving around orbit anymore. And my mouth is just hanging open.
Yeah, it's impossible.
I mean, she's a nice lady. I'm not going to jump down her throat, but the constellations move. We're going around the sun.
Right.
So this is the stuff that I've had in the past, and the timelines with the Noah's flood and all these things, which some of which have other explanations of heavenly bodies. Like, for example, we talk about Venus. Velikovsky and McKinney talk about Venus being a captured comet, and there's some backup to it because of the volcanic stuff going on there and whatnot. It's according to the plasma discharge model. I mean, that's very possible. Is it true? I don't know, but it's possible. And so somebody citing the Mayans talking about Venus having to do with Planet X, Well, Planet X is now become a planet. There is no more Planet X because it's there. So you can't count that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway.
Well, but let me give you an opposite view, though.
Okay.
Suppose that you're the House of Rothschild. And you have more money than everybody else combined. And you have an underground arc city because you know this thing's coming. And you have all the lettered agencies. You got the CIA now over there in Denver. The Council on Foreign Relations was sent there in 1938 from the New York Charter. And they've been working on this for a very, very long time. So how are you going to defend that? You're going to defend it using artificial intelligence and real-world simulation. That's exactly what they're doing there. And it's very complicated to try to, because I want to get to this other point. They're going to have the lettered agencies sending out so much information, disinformation, misinformation, to muddy the waters, just like you're saying, so that somebody that's reasonable, like yourself, is going to be so frustrated, you're never going to get there. So that's part of their operation, is to fill the bucket so full that, see, my little voice here is very, very small compared to everything that they're doing, just like with the 9/11 inside job.
Right.
And I know exactly what happened. If you go to my book, just read chapter 11. If you're not going to read the whole book, just 11, 100, there's a timeline there. There is a sequence of events that are placed in chronological order, the top 100 events, some of them separated by hundredths of a second. And that's exactly what happened. When you go to look at the official story and you go to the Dylan Avery and the loose change brats, and then they're just muddying the water. The Richard Gage and what's going on over there, the Scholars for Truth, what's going on over there. These are lettered agency-based operations. And you have the same thing going on with the Planet X. People were being deployed, these operatives that were I was working against every day, that they were going away, like Lucas did. Here, I was wondering, where are all these people going? I didn't know where it was. But now I know where it was. Project Black Star.
Okay. Well, boy, that was a fast half hour. Right? Man, we're buzzing along here. It's already time for a little break. We'll be back in a couple minutes, and we'll continue. I must say, you do have piqued my interest, which hasn't happened in a while. So we'll continue riding this wave with Terral as he talks about the Black Star and the event timeline and everything tangent on around it, especially the preparations that might be being made by the powers that be. Explains a lot of things. What was missing for me was the physical, tangible evidence of the planet and of the event, and we're starting to get some of that. So hold on. We'll be right back in a second. All right, Terral, are you back there? All right, the phone is ringing. People have been nice. They've waited. So let me bring this open and see if we can find out what's going on here.
Sounds great.
Hello, you were on the air with Terral, Feet to the Fire. Very loud. Hell, can you hear me? Hello.
Must be a delay.
All right, well, yeah, if you're watching the video and you're calling to try and hear yourself or watch it, don't do that because there is a delay. Well, let us keep going during this. One thing, we got a lot of the technical stuff in. It's cool, and I would like to see you update the timelines, and I want to watch these things and pay attention. I will start to read some of the backward stuff because I would like to catch up, let's say, and then look forward. Because really, I'm into reality. People say they're truth seekers and all that, and that's fine, but I want reality. I want to know what's really going on. I mean, that doesn't mean I have to like it, you know. And a lot of the stuff that I've been dealing with has been truth in a relative sense. And I just kind of want to know what the real deal is. I'm getting all kinds of sure.
That's a link to volume 2 of my newsletter. It just came out last Thursday. Let me just say, you can pass it. I like for people to read the newsletters. Just
gotcha.
Whoever you want to share it with.
Okay, we'll do that. I've noticed, by the way, people who are tuning in and listening, most of your work seems to be YouTube based. Is there a particular reason for that, or it's just as opposed to PDFs or what have you?
As far as PDFs or what have you, I give a YouTube video update every Thursday, and then I'm on Revolution Radio every Thursday, Black Star Thursdays, from 4 to 5 o'clock, right before Liberation Nation. And then I put out the newsletter, and so it's actually a lot of work.
Oh, no,
And,
I understand that. I was just...
you can get a hold of me at Terral03.com, and I don't know if there's a reason for that or not. That's just how the investigation began, and I've just been doing what I've been doing, basically.
All right. So as we look out into the world now, there's a lot of things going on. There's financial problems along the way. In fact, my favorite explanation for the seed banks and all these things is economic collapse and the elites going underground while, we have various levels of war and decay up on top. That'd be my personal view of what's to come. But nonetheless, these things are coming. The economic collapse, be it timed, that these people are draining all the dough they can, which is kind of funny because the dollar isn't really mean anything. It's a piece of paper. But there's apparently some kind of agreement amongst thieves that it means something. But they're draining the economy and so forth. And I got a link by somebody talking about the Baltic Dry Index is, and they have a picture of a ship stalled and sinking. And what I want to add into it from my own business, being I own and operate my own truck, and I do a lot of container moves, which come in from Japan and China, and it is incredibly dried up. It is the people at my company they're scratching their heads. They can't explain why at this time of the year, which would be actually there'd be a low for Chinese New Year, and then it would pick up dramatically. But this last Christmas this last summer has been dead, and it should have been flowing like crazy for the Christmas season, and it wasn't. And so I up until this moment, I said, well, I really don't know why it's doing it. But then looking at some of these things here, I would imagine the elites on all continents are starting to stop worrying about their businesses and starting to circle the wagon, so to speak.
Okay. Do you want my little overview on what's going on there with the geopolitical stuff? The economy collapsed on September 18, 2008. Whenever Paulson and Bernanke bought that 3.5 pages in, and they handed it to our representatives, and they started TARP 1 legislation, which is against the law. And then went to TARP 2. Now you have quantitative easing, and you have the silver short position by J.P. Morgan, inherited from Bear Stearns, and they're using the back door of the Fed. Well, the economy has already collapsed. It's just run on, like you said, it's run on nothing but confidence. It's a slot machine game, and what they're doing is taking the cheap money from the Fed and they're investing it, and they're showing profits when really everything is going south. So it's not that the elite do not want to create another threat. They cannot estimate the size of the Black Star threat. They're going to the underground arc cities, but they do not want to collapse everything. You think if they want to collapse everything that the price of gas would be $1.71 like it is right now down the street from me? No, it would still be $4. They'd be siphoning the money out. They're trying to make us feel less pain right now, actually, like through the gas prices, giving you some more disposable income, things like that. The truth is that lone wolf is everywhere, and they cannot protect against lone wolf. That's their biggest threat, is bad people getting inside the underground arc cities. So they would rather keep us occupied rather than have mass chaos and mayhem in the streets. So you have disinformation. Remember, counterintelligence works 24/7, just like the intelligence people do, 24/7. They're crisscrossing like chemtrails. So there's a lot of disinformation that's out there, and the global economy could be turned around in an instant if that's what the House of Rothschild wanted. So this is a controlled demolition. So it's happening in slow motion right now. And the price of silver is still below $15, so there's not a collapse happening anytime tomorrow. That's one of the leading indicators that I watch. As long as silver stays down, you look at the chart, the 5-year chart is still going down. But whenever that baby starts going up, you guys that are buying silver right now are going to look real smart whenever it does bounce, because it could go into hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a single ounce of silver. So you guys with the resources might want to think about doing something like that. But if you want to talk about the Middle East, that's another Rothschild op. Remember Afghanistan? He went through Afghanistan and installed a central bank. He's done it through Iraq. They couldn't. They had the gold-based currency coming out with Libya, so Gaddafi had to die because that was going to destroy all the fiat currencies. So he had to die. And now they're making the move on Syria, and the Russians got in the way. Then the Russians got out of the way. Now the Russians are back in the way, and then they're going to go to Iran. And that's the jewel in Rothschild's scepter. Is Iran. That's the plan that he's trying to execute over there. It's not about oil. It's about currency creation. So the same people that own the Federal Reserve in the United States, that's a private corporation, that they're setting up central banks all over the planet. And there's only a few countries left. And Iran is actually a bastion of freedom that's standing against the House of Rothschild, just like the Syrians are doing. This battle that's been going on is about establishing a central bank. I mean, it sounds oversimplified, doesn't it? But that's exactly what
it makes sense.
That's what he's doing.
If you go back to the Bush speech about the axis of evil, it just kind of all those that are mentioned economically had their own banks or was selling oil for other than the American dollar. The shouldn't American. Right. I mean, it makes sense. And now all of a sudden, all these deals are being made for Iran. They've sanctions are being lifted and so forth. So my guess, we can look to see a central bank being installed there.
Well, that's the plan anyway. But that's kind of my overview of it. They are going to the underground arc cities. There's talk about martial law. Obama sells more guns than anybody. Every time he clears his throat to talk about guns, people go out to buy guns. So I hope he keeps doing that. I actually hope he keeps doing that. But it's the reverse effect. You're seeing this all across the board. Like, for example, Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay should not exist. The people that are there should be charged or released. Charge them or release them. But they don't have the evidence to charge them because the people that did 9/11 are the ones that put them there. If the people that were in there actually did 9/11, they'd be friends of Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld. Those aren't the people that are in Guantanamo Bay. They do not have anything to charge these people with other than probably disrupting a CIA black op. So they got caught and they were just put there, but they're never going to be charged because then we have to show the evidence. Right. We don't want to do that. So the American people allowing these human beings, remember, all men are created equal. Read our own government documentation. And they have the right, just like we do. There's only one God. We all live under the same God. And our rights, our Second Amendment right, First Amendment right, aren't given to us by the Constitution. They're endowed to us by our Creator. Okay? So these men have the same right to see the evidence against them as we do. As soon as you allow them to be detained perpetually, then you are worthy of the same thing. That's what's going on. There's a detention agenda that is in place right now. And they're using Guantanamo Bay for that. So Obama saying to close Guantanamo is the opposite of what they've been doing all this time. So he's actually right on that point.
Yeah, well, one of his things when he ran for president was one of the first things he would do is close Guantanamo. And when he got into office, he came up with this, well, we're going to have to do it in steps. And, he back then, here it is, still open. So, I mean, I don't know if he meant it. And then when he got in, he got the real story. Some people...
Obama doesn't mean anything. He's a CIA operative, just like Osama bin Laden. And the stand-down order that got Stevens killed came out of Denver, CIA Denver. That's the A team of the CIA. The B team's in Langley. It came out of Denver. The video story came out of Denver. That's the thing. The stand-down order that got the commander there, like 30 seconds when he got the order to stand down, he goes, no way. He was deploying people. He was relieved of duty. And the Benghazi was all about CIA gun running to ISIS. They were funding ISIS, giving intelligence to ISIS. And Stevens and his people died under 2 DOD CIA drones. Everybody with the access codes watched it happen. Those people have all that information, and it's all being withheld. Hillary's going to walk because she's carrying water for the CIA. That was a black op that killed Stevens. That's the truth of what's going on. But your congressmen are on the payroll. So Gowdy is dragging his feet. He's had enough evidence to put Hillary in prison for a long time, but they're not playing that card. They're stretching all this out because they're all going to go together to the underground Ark City later down the road. So they're puppets on a stage, keeping you mesmerized every day. That's what their job is. Just keep you pacified. And you don't want all the cattle to stampede. You want to keep them in their stalls, and then you want to herd them, and you want to send them to slaughter. That's what the plan is. And they're going to do that through the propaganda, just like Hitler did. This is the Fourth Reich here in the United States, and it's the same house of Rothschild that was calling the shots and that destroyed Hitler. When they pulled the money out, when Rothschild pulled the money away from Hitler, he went under. Same thing's going to happen to the United States, but it's going to be controlled demolition. Controlled. So that, for example, Jade Helm 15, you probably did some talking about that. That was a preparation for what's about to happen out west. There's going to be a gigantic event that happens there out west. You notice it was in Texas, where it's inside of my safe zone area, and then it extended over, but it did not go into California because California is where crap is going to hit the fan over there. But Jade Helm exercise is it's a sleeper op, that's what I call it. All these people are being deployed so that they can be deployed into harm's way later down the road. So it's going to be you against these troops, but you're all supposed to die. So there's a CIA, and there's some of the CIA people going to their underground Ark City, and there's some that aren't. They aren't invited. There's only so much space. Same thing with our military. Same thing with Navy. Difference between Navy and Navy intelligence. These intelligence guys are going, and the regular Navy people aren't. So there's a division there. You have your A teams and your B teams, and I call the B teams sleeper people. They're being trained for deployment into harm's way. So if it was me and I was Rothschild, I'd want Russian troops deployed to America, and I want American troops deployed to Russia, because when the crap hits the fan, the people are going to kill those foreign troops. That's what I would want, because if American troops are here in the United States, they're going to defend the people. So you can expect there's going to be some of that deployment. But this is all a gigantic plan being orchestrated. And the key for me for understanding is that artificial intelligence is running real-world simulations into the future to tell them what to do. How to identify the threat. So these scientists, there's 70 scientists have been killed that have been engaged in black star research, dark star imaging research. And Sheldon Day, he has it, Stu Noodle's report there on his website. It's also in the 2016 Dropbox folder for all my newsletter subscribers. And if I can, I just want to mention that's the only way to support my research. You become a newsletter subscriber, $25 per year. Then you get a special Gmail account, and then you can write me your questions. I send you the answers, and then I put that in the weekly newsletters to help other people. So that's this is all a gigantic plan. If you watch the movie 2012, you see how some people know what's going on and some people don't.
Right.
They're running to these Ark ships. In reality, they're running to the underground Ark cities, and you're not supposed to know about it. I'm not supposed to know about it. We're not invited to go there.
Well, and you've seen that in the Deep Impact, another version of that where they had the underground cities. I wanted to mention I saw a movie the other day that Terminator Cisgen or whatever. I was thinking of that when you were talking about the simulation of what to do and so forth, and. I think that a lot of times you get this information from movies that are masqueraded as I don't know. Is it a joke that these things come out in movies? Is this an accident that it comes out in movies or books or what have you? Because I will see a movie, read a book, and there'll be some truth in there that I got like a built-in kind of truth meter or resonance or something, and I'll say, there's something to this, and that's how I did my Bible studying. I was looking in the Greek and Hebrew upon almost intuition, and found a lot of things which helped me break out of the fundamentalist circle.
Great.
So, I mean, there seems to be truth in these things, even though they're made to make money and it's whatever. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the good side getting stuff through by, kind of just make, they're looking at the money of the movie and not paying attention to the message. They don't care what the message is as long as they make money, and then this stuff can come through. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, they're going to be creating a threat by trying to control that type of media. They want it to be shown there. Otherwise, we're going to come on and talk about how there's nothing about Planet X in any of the movies. There's nothing about this. The absence would raise red flags. So it really needs to be there. So it's part of the landscape, and then you don't even notice it. It's desensitizing the people. They're out there keeping them going, bah, you know.
Well, I mean, what's the goal here? I mean, because again, my philosophy is like you're here, and we're all going to die someday for some reason, right? So it's not about living; it's about how you live. So, what is the goal here? I mean, if you have these guys with their underground cities and all this stuff, what is the general goal? To get a bunker and stay alive?
No.
I mean, what's the goal? What do you look at as the goal to this?
Okay, they keep mentioning the New World Order. The New World Order begins when the Black Star leaves. You know, the Georgia Guidestones agenda, 500 million people. That's the maximum of what they want. The way that the world population is going to go down, and by the way, I haven't mentioned Project Black Star came from the Dakota Report, given to me by Jim Mars. And they talk about the genocide. And all these ops that they're running now is in the report there. You definitely want to read that. You can get it from the CIT boys. Just Google the Dakota Report. Read everything in the operations section on Project Black Star, a.k.a. Stellar Fury. That's what my project is there. But what their goal is do threat the same as every military. They're going to do threat assessment, contingency planning, and then they're going to execute that plan. So they're going to the underground arc cities, and they're going to emerge to a utopian society. The HARP, that was a Alaskan base analog system, is now a digitized space-based system, and that's going to be part of their new world order. They're putting all the pieces into place for their utopia, except for everybody else is supposed to die, but they do not have to kill us. The Black Star is going to do that whenever it gets there.
Now, I think in my own personal worldview of history, which is always open to more information and adjustment, is that this happened before in the past. And I know David Icke had mentioned something years ago which got me pondering it. And I'm not basing it on him as the source of truth, but when he started saying things, again, my truth meter is kind of says, hey, there's something there. And that's where the Caucasus side, Caucasus Mountains, and the white coming out of the ground from living underground for so many years is where the white race has come from and all that. I mean, it seemed like it's a possibility that this happened before, went underground, when the people were left to fend for themselves, and some survived, and this is where the races of color has come from. They emerge back out from their underground and start to pull the strings upon doing this. And I'm not saying they had great technical abilities. They may not have. But they had enough to survive, and they've come on to continue, and now they're going to go back underground with more technical know-how and whatnot and come out on the other side again. So it sounds to me like this is the first time this has happened.
Oh, that's their plan, but their plan's going to backfire on them.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute, if I can, the backfiring of the plan, because I personally don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I think what's going to happen is something's going to happen we're talking about here, but I don't think they're going to win. And I'm looking at some type of divine intervention to prevent this. Now, my own personal self, for those who are maybe interested, I put a little YouTube video out because I had a vision while driving, which was very interesting. I've never had visions, and I've had daydreams, but this was very about what I call the restoration of creation. And without going into it, you can go to YouTube and people can watch it for the details. But the bottom line is that if my vision is correct, or if this is just a daydream, and maybe this is a wishful thinking, very powerful wishful thinking, I don't know. But if it's correct, the intervention to creation will happen prior to the destruction. That this world, this experiment, this proof of Earth, allowing the predators and the peace people to be together and make choices and all this little thing is going to end. God will intervene early because he doesn't need to see it all be destroyed and fall apart for it to happen. And that this is a real event that's coming, but there will be a divine intervention. I don't mean that I'm just hoping for that. And this is what I think.
You're familiar with Scripture. You're familiar with Scripture, right?
Yeah.
1 Thessalonians 4. Paul talks about the rapture, being caught up to the Lord. That's the intervention that you're talking about for many people. And he says to comfort them with these words. But then he turns around and talks about how the day of the Lord begins. Not how it ends. He talks about how it begins. And
Right.
this is what's happening right now. And he says destruction is going to come upon them. It's going to come suddenly. So there is destruction,
Yeah, right.
most certainly.
Let
But
me just
chosen ones get.
let me say
Okay,
before we go into that, I have a problem with the pre-trib rapture model. To me, I think it was created by putting together verses rather than a organic. I think the stuff that Paul is talking about is a mystery, and I don't think that it's a literal timetable type thing. So I don't go along with the pre-trib rapture. In fact, I don't go along with the rapture as it's people have come to know it. Though again, I am looking for some type of divine intervention, and in the whole idea of going up could be an advancing in a how would I put it? A vibrational sense. Now, I'm not a New Ager at all, but a vibrational sense to go into a 4D existence rather than 3D. I mean, I'm just throwing these things out as variants of what it could be. But I think what we have is a world. A lot of people are the fundamentalist Christian types who are going to sit there and enjoy the destruction of the evil people, why they, the chosen people, are going to be there judging the sinners and all this. You see where I'm going? I think those people are going to be very surprised when they have to go through the events up to a certain point because they have to realize that there should be love is the only answer in this. And I mean the real love to realize that there is evil in the planet and there's evil people who are separating themselves from God's influence, which is very humble, but it shouldn't be enjoyed. If I can use the sense.
Can I help?
Yeah,
a little
sure.
bit with that doctrine thing?
Yeah.
The preacher. This is the focus of my life. The scripture work. I'm learning the science of Project Black Star. It took 5 years to figure out 9/11, but scripture. That's what I did for decades, and I know the truth of that stuff. I know how that sounds, but here it is. It's pretty simple. Paul is not talking about. There's the pre-trib, the mid-trib, the post-trib interpretations are all wrong.
Yeah.
They're way off. Because our rapture begins the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord lasts 3,658 years. The black star is going to come at the end of the age, and it's going to fulfill what Christ said in Matthew 24 in Revelation. Wormwood and that stuff comes with the black star next time. The wars and rumors of wars, the earthquakes, the volcanoes, the tsunamis, that's going to happen now. The black star is here. But it comes like a thief in the night to us because it comes in the spring. In the fall, on a fall crossing out, remember there's an inbound orbit? Crossing point, there's an outbound too. Now, whenever the Earth is in summer and this thing crosses Earth orbit path, they're going to meet in the fall to fulfill Scripture. That's when the tribulation and stuff's happening. That's 3,600 years from now. Christ is talking about 3,600 years from now. Paul's talking about how the day of the Lord comes, how it begins. So I'm a pre-trib rapture guy too, except for my rapture happens 3,600 years before the tribulation.
All right, well, let's take a little break and we'll come out. Maybe we can continue on that. The important thing that I see is that whether it's Planet X or whatever your reasons, is that people are preparing for something happening, which I think is a good idea. But I myself, I don't know why. I've learned to trust my insides because it's God speaking, if I can get out of the way, so to speak. And a lot of the times I don't feel nervous about it. I don't know how to explain it, but we'll take a break. We'll come back as we're talking with Terral on the Black Star, and of course it goes out into many tangential topics. So we'll be right back after this. Well, you know what the heck of it. Let me hear. Can you give us a little outline then of your pre-trib rapture scenario? What's happening in actual timelines? Along with the Dark Star. I'd like to hear that.
Okay. The rapture happens just before the sudden destruction of Scripture. So you go 1 Thessalonians 4 or 1 Thessalonians 5. So we're anticipating it, and all of a sudden, we're gone. See, in reality, you are already standing. We're having a conversation in another realm, the almost infinite realm that contains this universe. This universe is like the yolk of the egg. The almost infinite, that's heaven, is containing it. Then that's like the white of the egg, and then the shell is infinite. That's That's really the only realm that's real. That's where you're a god. That's where we came from. That's why Ecclesiastes 1, starting at 9, reads the way it does. Because we've all done this before. Like you were saying, we must have done this before. And we have done this before 2 times before. But there was a spirit witness first, then there was a blood witness, and now we're doing the water witness part down here. And that's much of what my book's about, is showing people the 3 witnesses of Scripture. They appear in Genesis 1:1. They appear throughout the Bible, all the way to Revelation. The entire Bible itself is 3 witnesses of spirit, blood, and water with 2 veils, exactly like the tabernacle of Moses and exactly like the temple. Exactly like you. You have 2 veils, the one dividing your soul from your spirit and the one dividing your soul from your body. So it's all the same model, 2 overlapping circles. Okay?
It's funny you said that, because I put out a YouTube out, and I made a diagram just like that. Having the
2
overlapping
overlapping
circles.
Well, you put the Father in the top, the Son in the middle, and you put the Holy Spirit in the bottom, then that's the word. That's the word broken. Just like you are a singularity too. Your other half is an angel. Put the woman back inside the man back inside the angel, and you have a living soul. That's how we are in heaven. There's no men, there's no women, there's no angels either. The angels live in the heavens, above heaven. That's the spirit witness of this realm. So that's all laid out for you in 80 diagrams in my book, The Mystery Explained. So the scenario for the rapture thing is...
and let me know what exactly the rapture is then, too, in that.
Well, the rapture is that you in this existence is going to stop existing instantly.
So now, will my body die, or it will go up as well?
Nothing in this realm is real. This is a temporal realm right here. Where you and I are standing in the almost infinite realm, that's heaven. Okay. The heaven of Genesis 1:1. But see, there's another heaven of Genesis 1:8, the one that was begotten between the waters and the waters. So that's the heaven of this universe. Heaven of Genesis 1:1 is the heaven that contains this universe. So,
well, anyway,
I kind of lost my track there.
Yeah, we got off. But, so I'm looking at a timeline, not a timeline, but forgetting the actual dates, what will transpire as far as rapture and all, the 3,600 years it'll come back will be the day Lord and all that. Just kind of put that together.
Hold that question, and then I remembered your other one. You want to know how it's going to happen. Are we going to... You're actually standing there having a conversation now, and you're going to still be in the... You're in the middle of that conversation. You're going to finish your sentence at the rapture. So we're already there. You know me, I know you. We're all members of each other's body. We're all members of one another, like Paul says, Romans 12, start at verse 4. And well, he talks about us, about being members of the body of Christ, and that's being members of heaven. We're there right now, and we're all connected together. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit difficult to explain in human terms down here, but it makes perfect sense when you're standing in.
No, I get it. I mean, I have my own model of that, which is similar. So it's good.
So you're raptured according to the mystery of Christ. There's an antithesis doctrine, the mystery of iniquity. That's in 2 Thessalonians chapters 2, start at verse 7, and the deluding influence, and that stuff. So it's not just that there's a rapture; there's an anti-rapture too. So these people that are members of the body of the Antichrist are going to be raptured at the same time we are. It says we're going to the righteous side of heaven, and they're going to the unrighteous side, which is the lake of fire, where they're predestined. So this is not going to work out good. These people that are going to try to leave us out to suffer from the black star are the ones that are going down to the underground ark cities. They're the ones that are making their own graves in the lake of fire. But they've already done that. So they have no control over that. They have no power in their hands. It's all far beyond. It's all fixed. None of us can change it. So when the rapture happens, we're going to be standing inside of our bodies. That's where we've been all the time. So it's just this will no longer exist anymore at the rapture. We're going to meet the Lord in the air, right? We're there with him already. We're there right now at this moment. And the people that
that would explain an increase, at least in my case, of having, how would I want to call it? I would say dreams, but not dreams, and being involved in a lot of daydreams, as well as that where I'm conversing and other things with other people and beings.
Absolutely.
Kind of overlaps consciousness. So don't worry about it. I can still drive a truck. So I don't mean, Well, but I mean, I get it. And again, we all might have our own drawing, let's say, that might differ a little bit here and there, but the principles are the same. And so I'm not really nitpicky when it comes to the actual logistics. But back to the actual kind of the time frame here. Again, I'm not asking for dates, but the outline of what's coming. You said the rapture's coming. Where is that in relationship to when the black star shows up?
Just before the black star tips the earth over and the sudden destruction comes.
Okay, let's just for
that's May the 20th.
May 20th, right? That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I was going to point to that as a possible.
It's going to be leading up to that, because the destruction comes on May the 20th. Now, there is a possibility that date is wrong. It's a possibility, but I'm going to know that before we get there. Remember, I told you we have these markers.
Right.
The Earth is telling us.
Yeah, right. I'm not actually keying on the 20th, but I'm trying to get a sense of. Now, you said it's going to go out in 3,600 years and come back. Well, what's going to be here during that time?
Elijah is going to return and begin the process of restoring all things, just like Christ says, Matthew 17, start at verse 10. He's the prophet of Acts 3, start at verse 19, where it talks about heaven holding the Lord by the hand, and the prophet that comes, and Moses says that this prophet is like me. That prophet is coming now with the black star, and he's going to restore all things. If you remember, if you go back to 2 Kings chapter 2, start at verse 10, then the chariot of fire came down and took Elijah away, and it took him to heaven. Well, it's these aliens that are going to be cleaning up the mess, because they're his children too. The person.
All right, let me go back then, because I think I misunderstood something. When they go into their ark cities, and they're going to come out and start their new world order and all that,
No,
so that's not going to happen. Okay, all right, all right. I understand. That's now I'm back in line here. Okay.
Okay.
So that's good. So Elijah's going to come and start all things, and so that's going to be the restoration, of
all things.
All things.
Mm-hmm.
And so there will be people here, I would imagine.
Well, remember that Elijah, Christ, his first miracle was to change water to wine. Elijah's first miracle was to raise the dead. It doesn't matter who dies. Elijah can raise everybody from the dead if he wants to. So there's no problem about. We don't have to look at the logistics side at all. You said something divine's going to happen? Absolutely, it's going to happen. He's going to lead Israel into the promised land. It's going to extend from the great river of Egypt all the way to Euphrates. That's going to happen. It's going to be a 3,600-year kingdom. But about after 3,100 years, then the devil and his beast son and their false prophet are going to incarnate on the earth as men. That still has to happen. We're going to be watching them from heaven like they're looking down on us right now. And they're going to have to deal with the black star. And they're not going to escape either at the end of the age.
Okay, so really what we're looking at is people being alive on Earth today is this May 20th, give or take, scenario. That's really the focus then. Because all this stuff you're saying is kind of, it doesn't include us anyway, so it's kind of, it's coffee table talk as opposed to actual real functional information. Right? I mean, because it doesn't really affect us at the moment. What does happen is what's going on in the world and how they're getting ready to go underground, knowing that this black star is coming and create havoc. So what should we do now?
My opinion, instead of focusing on 9/11 or Project Black Star, you go down to the bottom section and read, and you go through the 6 introductory videos that explain the differences between the 2 gospels, the differences between the 2 churches, the 4 baptisms, the difference between Jesus Christ and Christ Jesus, the difference between God and my Father who art in heaven, and then you're going to go into the mystery diagrams in number 6, and then you're going to read my book, The Mystery Explained, and you're going to be way, way, way ahead of your brethren when you get to heaven, and we're all competing to see who can be the nearest to Christ up on the top of that pyramid. He's the capstone of the pyramid, and the more mature sons are near the top with Paul, and the people that lived 2,000 years ago. And the way to make your up the food chain is understanding the 3 witnesses. That's the most important thing.
Well, let me ask you there. I mean, there is a link on the webpage. People can download the book. I wanted to say I have a little trouble with the term competing for who's going to be nearest to Christ. I don't like that idea because it sounds to me like another version of what's here. I don't.
Well, that's tough. I'm sorry. But that's what Paul says, to fight as if to win, not as beating air. You're in competition.
Yeah, but I'm not a big Paul fan either, to tell you the truth.
He's the steward of the dispensation of God's grace. If you obey our gospel, he's your steward. That's like Moses to
No,
Israel.
I tend to think that
They might not like him.
Jesus is the person to pay attention to, not Paul.
No, sir. Because Christ raised from the dead revealed all these revelations given to Paul. Where do you think they came from? They came from Christ. That's how we got our gospel. Galatians 1 started at verse 11. He wasn't taught this gospel. It wasn't the gospel of the kingdom that Peter and John and James preached. It was a gospel given to him by revelation of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ gave it to Paul, just like Jesus Christ gave Moses the law for Israel. Well, Israel can say they don't like Moses all they want, but that's who God put there as an intermediary. And Paul is the steward of the dispensation of God's grace, and that's why in 1 Corinthians 4, start at verse 15, it says that he became your father through the gospel. He was the first that was called by Christ on the road to Damascus. He's the first. He became the father because he's the carrier of the gospel.
So what about all the other stuff? What about all the sayings of Jesus and Jesus himself and all that other stuff? That's all just nothing?
No, it's kingdom doctrine. It's very important to keep those living under in the kingdom dispensation that's coming. See, whenever the period that's coming, they're going to be keeping the law. James 2, verse 10. If they don't keep the whole law, they're guilty of the whole thing. They're going to live according to the law. This grace period is a parenthetical period to the kingdom period. The kingdom period started with John the Baptist when he walked through the veil of Scripture as Elijah. The last two verses of the Old Testament is Elijah. You start with the book of Mark, then there's John the Baptist standing right there. He is Elijah. He stepped through the veil, but the kingdom was rejected, wasn't it? The gospel, the kingdom was rejected. Kingdom doctrine was rejected. Christ teaches kingdom doctrine. If you read, he was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He sent his disciples only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's who the law is for. They had to come first. So what you're doing is binding yourself under kingdom doctrine. That has nothing to do with you. You are those are the members of the bride of Christ. You're a member of the body of Christ. Totally different dispensation. Totally different. You have to take Paul, his stewardship, and what Christ gave to him as a revelation. That's your marching orders for today. And that's just the way that it is. I'm sorry we can't decide what dispensation we want to belong to.
No, but I'm just saying I don't agree with that. I mean, I don't mean any. I'm not going to argue with you about it. I'm just saying that I think the one.
No, you're allowed to disagree if you want to. But
I mean that the most important teachings that I have read and in my life that has helped me and I follow is the teachings of Christ, Jesus. Okay, I don't want to get the names mixed up. Jesus, well, his words that he taught are the words for life, and it's rather simple. It's having that love one another, do good things to other people, help along like that, and you are actually allowing the manifestation of God within you to come through, to make a nice vessel for God to be more intimately involved in your life and through your life. I mean, that's okay. I'm not saying you got to do it or not do it, or I'm just saying this is where we're going to part on, but that doesn't mean that the incidents here with this Black Star is going to be affected by that.
Oh, of course not. Yeah. Everybody has the right to be wrong. But eventually I'm going to sow some seeds, and maybe, the God will cause a growth. And that'll be a good thing. From my side of the equation, then you've got your view, and that's what talk radio is all about, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sharing of opposing views. Then everybody else gets to decide.
But also, the reason why I say this, too, is because one of the problems I have found is people, if you're following what someone is saying, and somewhere along the line, you might hit a rough spot where you don't agree with them, you don't throw out everything, because again, this is my personal worldview that I work under. I'm not imposing it, but I'm working under it, is that nobody has it all. Nobody knows it all. We all have pieces of the puzzle. No matter how small they may be, they're still significant. And no matter how large they may be, the small piece is still missing. So that when I hear someone talk, I will hear pieces that resonate. Not that I don't hear things I want to hear. It's things that stick. So it's not like I'm out looking to make my own comfort zone. I haven't been in a comfort zone, I can't remember when, other than ultimately trusting God that all this stuff will make sense, and that it's not just willy-nilly, accidental big bang that's going nowhere.
Well, you're sifting. You have a sifter. It's a mechanism, and you prefer the kingdom doctrine stuff fall down and be used, and the grace doctrine stuff stay up here in the netting, and because you don't like it.
No, it's not. It's not
That's the way it sounds.
I don't like it. I mean, it's not like I don't like it. It would be preferable to what the teaching of Jesus, which is actually going out there into the world, which doesn't want to do these things and is working against these things and still doing the principles, living out the principles that Jesus says. That, that's harder to do if you want to talk about liking things than to basically accept a lot of the doctrines of grace.
Oh, it's impossible to do because you're not under Mosaic law.
No, yeah, I know it's not. It's not. It's another thing I've looked at. It's not that you are supposed to get 100. You see, when you hear words like for someone who's given one of these, a cold cup of drink won't lose your reward. The idea being is that if someone goes out into this world with a love for their fellow human and does things to help them, that is the greatest aspect of it. The actual measure of how many times you mess up along the way, as long as you have that basic love principle as you go along, and when you are shown, okay, this is not, you shouldn't have done that, this is a good idea, this is a wrong idea, look how this has hurt somebody, whatever, you see it, you understand it, you accept it, and you move on. This is the kind of how I've been getting through the world, getting through life. I mean, I'm not saying this to somebody listening now. I'm not saying them that this is the truth. I mean, I'm just explaining what I have come across from both my studies as well as my internal interplay with God and in my life. And so, I'm only bringing this up because if somebody is not in tune with some of the particulars here, we can look at the evidence that you're putting out for the Black Star timeline. This is something that is more, in other words, you could be correct on the Black Star and incorrect in the theology, is what I'm saying. And for somebody,
or be correct in both.
Or be correct in both.
I mean, it's possible, right?
It is possible. It is, for my sake of my life, of going through life, is improbable that one person has it all only because of the danger of arrogance and the sin of pride, which comes from seen in intellectuals. How they'll sit themselves in front of 1,000 books and say, I've read all this stuff, I know it all, and they fall in the sin of pride. And so, it would be the same for someone who is studying about God. To say the know-it-all would be a great spot for pride to, falleth, if you will.
Absolutely.
So that's why I won't come out and say, no, this is right. This is why I use the terms. This is what I have seen, and it's always in flux. It's always in flux. That's why I like having people on the show for my own personal self, let alone in sharing with everyone else. So, at least in recapping, we can stay tuned and look at the event timeline, which you will be updating to show future alignments, or I don't like the word alignment as much as the crossing of these portals, these magnetic portals, tripwires, if you will, which will allow the energy to flow and things to happen. And I think the best indicator of someone having a good, what would be the word, equation, or a good handle on the outline would be predictive. I mean, if in science they do this, if you have come a model, you have a predictive model, and then things happen the way that they predict to show that formula is accurate. Mm-hmm. And so this is what I could do coming in late, let's call it, in what you're doing. I'm walking in years later. I can look back and also look forward and to see these things. At least this is the first, if I can use the word loosely, Planet X scenario that I haven't seen a million holes in. So I will say that's was refreshing.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll make you a subscriber, or you can be a contributor, and I'll send you Dropbox folder link for every year. since the first newsletter back to 2012, and then you can look it over. All the information, you're talking a couple hundred of newsletters. That's a lot of Black Star update reports. And in the beginning especially, didn't have a lot of data yet, didn't really know what I was doing, get my legs under me, and I made mistakes. But
and that's fine. I got no problem with that. You know, because as you're getting more tuned in on it, you update, you see, and that's cool. That's how it's supposed to happen. You know,
right.
to me, if somebody came to me with some revelation and said, "I saw this," that doesn't mean much to me. Someone who works at something for years and fine tunes the model and gets to be better and better, and it's more predictive, that means more to me. Because anybody could say anything, and believe me, on the internet they do. So you got me definitely interested in this.
Okay, so I'll get that email off to you, and I will get that chart updated for you. Get the website.
Yeah.
Chart updated, and so it's up to date.
Well,
Terral03.com, support the research, and become a newsletter subscriber.
yeah, I have a whole bunch of links on the webpage to the various things that you have up there, including, of course, the webpage. We had got a minute here, so we had a lady ask, James, can your guest say how long the sun might darken? Could it be similar to the biblical accounts of the sun growing dark? This regards the dark star attracting all the solar radiation when it nears the sun.
That's right.
Well, how long do you think that might be?
Well, for us, it doesn't matter because we have a crossing event in the spring before it reaches perihelion.
Oh.
At the end of the age, that's a fall event. Christ is describing the sun turning all the way dark because they're going to have a fall event. So it's after perihelion. So we don't get to see the signs. We do not even see it coming. Everything happens suddenly. But the amount of time that there's no way that I could know that. I mean, I've heard 3 days, but there's really no way that I can know that.
Fair enough. I had that sitting out there, and I forgot to ask, and I just saw it now. So I'm glad we got that in there. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. It was very interesting, and it definitely caught my interest, and I'll be looking in this. I don't have big gobs of time to go into things, so I'll be taking bits and pieces of it with me as I travel and looking at it. And maybe perhaps we can hook up and talk later on. And definitely be looking for you toward May.
Okay. Yeah, you got my email, so just whenever you want to have me on, just write me.
All right, will do. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.
All righty. There you go. We got the webpage up right now on here for those watching on the video stream. Terral03, Terral03.com. Along the side, there's all kinds of YouTube explanations as well as his newsletters and subscribing. So we will see you next week. How's Les Visible say? We'll be here next week if there is one. Alrighty. God bless.
With wisdom for the new, revive our inner sight, retell your timeless truths. Oh.